I refer again to The Holy Family, which was published in 1845 and predates the Communist Manifesto by 3 years. Again, this is a more obscure Marxist work, but it has great theoretical value. And again, I refer to Chapter 4. When socialist writers ascribe this world historic role to the proletariat, it is not at all as critical criticism pretends to believe, because they regard the proletarians as gods. In other words, workerist movements that glorify the worker or make the worker out to be more than he or she actually is, are ideological abstractions. Huge swaths of the class-conscious left today are guilty of this. The workers deserve, a raise. There's no value there. Rather the contrary, since in the fully formed proletariat, the abstraction of all humanity, even of the semblance of humanity, is practically complete, since the conditions of life of the proletariat sum up all the conditions of life of society today in their most inhuman form. Since man has lost himself in the proletariat, yet at the same time has not only gained theoretical consciousness of that loss, but through urgent, no longer removable, no longer disguisable, absolutely imperative need, the practical expression of necessity is driven directly to revolt against this inhumanity. It follows that the proletariat can and must emancipate itself. What Marx is referring here to, as I'll discuss momentarily, is a process of ongoing immiseration that affects the proletariat not only physically in terms of their material wealth, but psychologically, spiritually, morally. It degrades them. And this is an ongoing process active throughout the course of capitalist history. But it cannot emancipate itself without abolishing the conditions of its own life. It cannot abolish the conditions of its own life without abolishing all the inhuman conditions of life of society today, which are summed up in its own situation. Not in vain does it go through the stern but sealing school of labor. It is not a question of what this or that proletarian or even the whole proletariat at the moment regards as its aims. In other words, it's not driven to do this through ideology. It's not convinced of a proposition and then goes to act on it. That is what Marx criticized as utopian. It is a question of what the proletariat is and what, in accordance with this being, it will historically be compelled to do. Its aim in historical action is visibly and irrevocably foreshadowed in its own life situation, as well as in the whole organization of bourgeois society today. Everything that you need to know about what Marx anticipates the revolutionary conditions to be like are in this. But again, and I know that I'm hitting the same texts over and over, but that's because these texts are ignored and they need to be addressed and recognized. I'm going to go to the German ideology. Again, give me a moment. I'm doing this all on my own. I've never done this before. The German ideology was also written in 1845, about the same time as the Holy Family, from Chapter 1. This alienation, to use a term which will be comprehensible to the philosophers, can of course only be abolished given two practical premises. For it to become an intolerable power, i.e. a power against which men make a revolution, it must necessarily have rendered the great mass of humanity propertyless and produced at the same time the contradiction of an existing world of wealth and culture, both of which conditions presuppose a great increase in productive power, a high degree of its development. And on the other hand, this development of productive forces, which itself implies the actual empirical existence of men in their world historical instead of local being, is an absolutely necessary practical premise, because without it want is merely made general, and with destitution, that is poverty, the struggle for necessities and all the old filthy business would necessarily be reproduced. And furthermore, because only with this universal development of productive forces is a universal intercourse between men established, which produces in all nations simultaneously the phenomenon of the propertyless mass, makes each nation dependent on the revolutions of the others, and finally has put world historical, empirically universal individuals in place of local ones. So what Marx is speaking of here is a great immiseration of the working class that must take place. He doesn't say that the workers are poor. The workers might have a lot of money in the bank, but the structure of capitalism is such that it strips them of any utility there. Again, I go back to this idea of the Great Reset or Build Back Better. We're slowly, and this is a slow process. It takes years and decades. All these hedge funds are going to come in and slowly start buying up single proprietor homes. And they're going to convert them into rentals. You'll have an app on your phone, and you need a house, and you go and you find it, and you rent it for a certain period of time. It's going to be like Airbnb, except on a universal scale. Um, Car rentals will probably be a thing in the future. And this all has the effect of making your life more and more contingent and you more and more in hock to the capitalists. It's a development. It couldn't happen at any time. There has to be certain steps that lead up to it. And this is what Marxists don't get, particularly ones that are indebted to the Leninist tradition. Because Lenin thought that you could skip steps and kaleidoscope things together, and socialism is the lower phase of capitalist development. He was not a very good Marxist. Um, the propertyless mass becomes so immiserated that they eventually have to revolt. And this happens historically. It's a world historical movement of world historical individuals. And it requires universal intercourse. Well, what does that mean? Did you have universal intercourse in Lenin's time in 1917? No, you didn't. You only have that with the development of modern, i.e., post Cold War communications and information technology. So Marx anticipates things moving into the future. He doesn't have the precise language to articulate it at the time, but this is generally, in the broadest strokes, Marx's